One. All right, everybody, this is the Codes Fair and Farmers Market Committee meeting for August 18th, 2020. We're going to go through the roll call real quick. Vice Chair Withers, are you here?
Present.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Cash. Councilmember Gamble.
Present.
Councilmember Hall. Councilmember Peacock. Councilmember Johnston. Councilmember Poole.
I'm here. Johnson's here. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Bully is here.
Thank you, Councilmember Roberts.
I'm here.
Thank you, Councilmember Swope.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you, sir. And Councilmember Young.
Present.
Perfect. Thank you. So I can.
Chair, Councilor Hancock is here. Did you see him?
Gotcha. Thank you, Councilmember.
Okay, super.
9. All right. So we've got 9 present. All right. I'm going to make the motion and ask for Vice Chair Withers to second this motion pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 regarding elected meetings is extended by Executive Order number 3451. I make a motion that this meeting agenda constitutes a session of the Metropolitan Council, and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak.
Second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. All right, we're good. We have one bill that is on second reading, and it's mine, so I'll read the caption and ask for a second, and I'm going to turn the wheel over to Councilmember Withers. This is BL 2023-88 by Sledge. This amends the Metro Code of Laws regarding parking on private property. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, and Vice Chair Withers, with your permission, I will explain the bill.
Please do.
All right, thanks. Sorry, the caption is somewhat broad. So what this bill does, it refers to essentially the code on the books now allows for 25% of a property, a residential property, to be used. It can be essentially gravelled for parking. What this does is slightly tweaks the code to say that it's 25% of the unimproved property. So what does that mean? Well, essentially, right now we're counting the entire square footage of a property and then taking 25% of that could be gravelled out. If you have a property where, let's say, already 70% or so of the property is covered with an improvement, meaning new house, could be a house and an attached unit, whatever it might be, then by the time you're allowed the 25%, if somebody were to take the full 25% of the property, you have essentially created a property lot that is close to 100% what I will call either impervious or semi-impervious. So my intention here is actually purely about stormwater. An issue I'm seeing in the district I represent, and I'm sure others of you as well. Councilmember Henderson had a bill a few months ago regarding a concrete apron for driveways to try to reduce washouts, which are affecting both storm and gutter or curb and gutter and just stormwater systems in general. What I'm trying to do is reduce that. What I'm finding is, in fact, I've got a property literally right out my front door where the entire front yard has been gravelled. It's a codes violation right now that we're trying to get remedied, but I represent a district, I'm sure other of you represent districts too, where you had the old city-county line, so your infrastructure may be mixed, and in a lot of the district I represent, some areas may have curb and gutter, some may not. Even within a neighborhood, you will have streets that have curb and gutter, some that rely fully on basically ditches, right? And what I have found is that the more that these yards are getting gravelled under the current code, the more washouts we're seeing, and it's clogging up. It's clogging up both systems, but it's really hurting the curb and gutter. And I have had to call out water essentially to grab the giant vacuum to vacuum out gutters. all over, and it's gravel that's blocking it up. It's not litter, it's not other construction waste. It is small pebble sediment. So like I said, the real change in the code is saying unimproved still allows for you to gravel, still allows for parking spaces. And I did have one question that came up before the committee meeting about, will this affect people who want to allow for parking for a special event? The two instances that were named to me were Titans games and fairgrounds events. The short answer is no. And for representing the district where the fairgrounds is, anybody who does parking on those areas, I have found parks them on lawn, parks them on gravel, parks them on whatever, and nobody cares. We don't really care about that around, at least where I am. Don't know what the situation might be on Titans games. Councilmember Withers, you might be able to speak a little bit more to that, but that is the intent of the bill.
Thank you, Councilmember Sledge. In the Nissan Stadium area, we have miles and miles and miles of parking lots. So we do not usually have people parking in actual yards over by the Nissan Stadium. So, but a different issue. But yeah, is there any of the discussion in the from committee members? I'll try to look for hands. Councilmember Pulley, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a couple of questions here. I heard Councilmember Sledge state that stormwater was a little bit of an issue, which is why he's putting this forward. So how does pervious surface affect this? Would this still not apply even though pervious pavers were put in instead of impervious surface? That would be one of my questions.
Gotcha. That's a great question, Councilmember. I may turn to codes on this because if I remember correctly, the portion of the title, or I may turn to Mr. Cooper on this, is primarily about gravel, but let me turn to somebody who knows a little bit more about the code portion than I do.
Because I don't know that particular portion is addressed in the analysis, other than to simply state that paved or gravel parking area is what's referred to in the current analysis that I've seen. Secondly, I'm assuming yes is the answer, but any building that already exists, which would in effect violate this, would certainly be grandfathered in under this, would it not?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, this doesn't affect any existing facilities, and I will tell you, I mean, our personal residential property when we purchased it 10 years ago was concreted to oblivion, and we have tried to pull some of that up. But yeah, I've tried to keep that in mind, that there are lots across the county that existing wise they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing about the pervious part of this, so that that may in fact encourage more pervious surface if we were to somehow or another amend that out of here.
Yeah, Mr. Cooper, is there, my understanding looking at the code is it talks about paved or graveled, so I think it covers everything. Is that accurate?
So this is Hannah Zeiland.
Hannah.
I am covering for John. He had to step away for a moment. So I missed a little bit of the discussion, but I believe the question is whether this bill would apply to paved and gravel areas.
No, the question is, would it apply to pervious surface in addition to that? If they were to put pervious pavers instead of impervious paving or gravel?
I believe that it would apply to both. I think that paved or gravel parking area, to me, that seems to apply to both, but I'm not sure about this one.
Yeah, and this is Evan with codes. You know, the way it's written, it says paved or graveled. I also am not sure. I think we'd have to check with Bill Herbert on that.
Yeah, that's Well, Vice Chair, then let me offer this since we need to look at that. And I'm actually really glad. Thank you, Councilman Bully, for bringing that up because I've had a separate conversation with Hannah about previous pavers about trying to encourage the use of those. So why don't we do this, Vice Chair, with your permission? Do you mind if I make a deferral motion of one meeting? We can get those questions answered.
Second that motion.
Well, what I'd like to do, I do see a couple other folks with hands raised, and I just want to make sure if there are any other questions from committee, we go ahead and get them all at one time if we can. So I'll go down do you have anything else, Councilmember Pulley?
No, sir. You can move the other committee members. That's fine.
Are you gonna lower your hand? Next, I've got.
I keep it up and aggravate you with it.
Next, I have. It looks like, and I apologize to everyone. I can't see what order they are raised in, but Councilmember Vercher. Does Councilmember Vercher have a question? Next, I'll go to Councilmember Gamble.
Yeah, Chair, I do.
Okay.
It's coming up slow. So, just want to thank the sponsor regarding this, and I want to be clear what this legislation does because I had some conversations with stormwater and codes maybe a couple of years ago surrounding this. So there's two issues at hand regarding when neighbors are allowed to either pave or gravel their entire yard. One is if you live in a flood-prone area like myself, it creates another issue as it relates to runoff. And then two and I know we don't always like to talk about this, but it's the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So if I'm your neighbor beside you and you pave your entire front and backyard, it creates a hardship for me to be able to resell my home. So if the sponsor can speak to, I had discussed with codes and stormwater some type of ratio as it relates to that percentage of what can be paved and what can be gravel. If this legislation is actually doing that, and then the third issue is this too: when we allow neighbors to pave or gravel their entire front yard, now their children don't have anywhere to play, so they play in the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the fourth issue is, and Chair, this is my last point, because this one is near and dear to my heart, because what it is, it ends up being a loophole for code enforcement. So what happens is a neighbor maybe gets cited for parking on the grass multiple times, go to court, they get tired of that. So what they do, they either gravel the entire yard or they pave the entire yard so that they can't be cited for parking on the grass. So, I think this legislation would correct that loophole while protecting value in communities too.
Okay, thank you for raising that. Next, I think I had Councilmember Gamble. Did you still have a question?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. I have a question about the 25% of unimproved property. I guess clarification on that. So, for example, if someone improved their home for ADA, for wheelchair access or something, is there an exclusion for that if they were to pave their part of their yard or part of a new area for that reason? Is there any consideration for that?
Okay, I think, yeah. Do you have a response today, or do you just want to include it in the next version?
Let me include it in the next version, Councilmember. I'll work on that and get an answer on that as well. I think we'd be okay, but I'll double check.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I do see Councilmember Henderson has her hand raised, would like to raise a question or offer thoughts.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Councilman Sledge, for addressing this. Gravel is a problem in several ways. I did want committee members, just because they were making broader inquiries, that the bill that recently passed regarding driveway aprons also included an enforcement provision that was not necessarily particular to driveways, but said that gravel from any private property that washes into the public right of way, so to Councilman Sledge's point, clogging up stormwater conveyances, getting onto sidewalks, getting into bikeways. We encourage citizens to call about that to the hub for to be fixed. But colleagues, because of the bill recently passed, then we do now have an enforcement mechanism through Public Works with our right-of-way inspectors. So you can issue something to say, if that were to repeat, that could be a violation. And so I know, Councilor Lady Bircher was kind of alluding to how some of the things were kind of, slipping through the cracks relative to gravel on the codes enforcement side. So that's just one other enforcement piece. When gravel on anyone's property is getting into the public right of way, we do have an enforcement mechanism now. And so I just wanted to share that with the committee, since you all were engaging that space. It's not, I apologize, really particular to Councilman Sledge's bill, but it's somewhat related. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. Next hand that I see is Eben.
Thank you, Councilmember. There's two, to Councilmember Pulley's question about pavers again, the codes department, we would view a paver the same as paved or gravel, but Metro Stormwater may prefer pervious pavers, or they may have a different idea. So I think this might actually be a question for Stormwater as well.
Okay, great. So we've got lots of good questions from the committee. Are there any other committee members? I know we have Councilmember Sledge, did you make a motion for a deferral, a one meeting deferral?
I'll make that motion. Yeah, one meeting deferral.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on that motion? All right. I'll go ahead and call a vote. All in favor of a one meeting deferral, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We have a one meeting deferral. Thank you so much, Councilmember Sledge, for your work on this legislation.
All right. Thank you, Vice Chair. And that will conclude the Codes Fair and Farmers Market Committee. We stand adjourned. Thank you.